he would appear to be bigger because he's closer to us. His eyes are on the same horizon that your eyes are on as the painter. If there's a guy in the distance walking down the street, he will appear smaller because his feet hit the ground sooner, but his eyes are on this very same horizon. Such a critical, simple concept that some people have a hard time grasping, but there it is. Everything in perspective vanishes on that horizon. So the street appears to slope up and vanish on that horizon. Something like that. And the building lines appear to slope down. They don't. Just the things as they get further away from us progress in space and appear to slope down, and they vanish on that horizon in the distance. But the horizon is the datum line at which all things appear to vanish at infinity in the horizon. And everything radiates off those points of perspective. My view, and as the artist, you have the power to move the sun if you really want. You definitely have the power to move buildings around.
So here you're painting the tones as you see them. You're not trying to change things to make it more dramatic. Like this morning you had the 3 sketches where you had the 3 tones and you were playing around with them. Here you're just looking at the tones as they are.
Yeah, I'm going to manipulate them, but I'm not. I mean, I chose this view because I think the basic values are all right about where they need to be. So in simple terms, I'm almost there. What I love about this view are the shapes, but also the arrangement of lights. When I look out there, I try not to look at the objects. I just try to look at the lights and where they're falling. I see the light on that wall, the dark of the foreground framing, and then the midtones of the shadows as they camp down across that wall. So, and the bottom part of the wall, as it gets down away from the sun, is picking up less light, obviously. So the bottom part and the street beyond are not dark, but they're all sort of mid-tones. So in the very simplest schematic way, that's what I'm looking at. So if I want to number my values, I would say 1 is the lightest light. That's here. 2 are my mid-tone values. It's the lower part of the wall. Also the plaza down below. Not dark, but a range of mid-tones. Again, it's not a consistent value. There'll be variations within it, there'll be variations of color, but essentially mid-toned. And my darkest dark will be the framing of the archway above, a bit down here, of course. But again, this won't be one big consistent, simple dark shape. There'll be variations in it. There'll be some lighter parts, some darker parts, some warm, some cool. And then I'm going to artificially create a shadow coming across. I may even change this up and put some sun coming right through here. That doesn't exist, but I think that'll help give me a nice dialogue of lights to lights, darks to darks, and mid-tone. I am holding an edge a bit around the tops of the buildings, but only a bit. I'm going to bleed in some of the shadows up there so it all joins. I love all the parts of my paintings to connect together as much as they can. So if you notice, there's very deep cornices, but the tops of the shadows are not gray, dark, gloomy. There's a lot of bounce reflected sun up underneath those overhanging balconies and cornices. So to tell that story, I am going to come in with some complementary orange to the blue that I just used to start to lay in these cornices underneath those, the very tops of the building. If a bit of that runs up into the sky, that's just great. I don't mind. I like it. It means all parts of the painting connect together. I love to modulate my yellows then with some violets. And then already I've got this whole, just beginning, but this orchestration of warms, cools, midtones, lights and midtones working together. I'm not worried about specifics of what these windows up there look like. I'm just telling the story of windows, and I'm not really rendering specific windows or specific anything. The main thing I'm trying to do, based on my earlier sketch, is to maintain enough light up here in the tops of these buildings. So I don't want to subtract away too much of the white. It's going to be pretty much the only real white in the whole painting. So I'm really holding back on putting too much detail at all in any of that. Oh, thank you, Cecilia. I give a lot of workshops where a lot of architects attend. And I'm one too, so I'm not criticizing architects so much. But they're often the types that'll say, why are you putting orange under those shadows? I don't see any orange.
I think that's unfair on architects.
I'm sorry, it's true. Not everyone. No, I'm just trying to be funny. There are types of people that are so literal and so specific. Architects are not always, but sometimes they are. There are literal types that are not architects, of course. But the point of my little snarky story is just to say, again, the reality of the painting is a very different reality than the reality of what the inspiration for the painting may be. This just, what I'm looking at just tells me something. It doesn't tell me everything I need to know. As you get further away in space, it's often appropriate to get more schematic, more simple in your shapes, more light in your tones, both to emphasize the light, but also to imply distance. As things get closer, they can tend to be a little more specific and a little darker. But the story of that wall to me is those beautiful abstract patterns of shadows that come down from the windows, the cornices, the balconies, etc. They make this, to me, very beautiful abstract pattern of mid-tone darks against that light. So it's not important to me that they look exactly accurate as much as they tell the story of that beautiful lacy wall. Now, were I working in the studio from photos or a sketch, this could probably be a much more specific, detailed painting. But it's the other great thing about plein air work. You can really afford to breathe and give yourself a break and just have fun and not worry too much about being too literal or too tight or too specific. Now the other big deal is as that wall comes down, the bottom part of the wall, now the sun is shifting, but it's further away from the origin of light, so the whole bottom of the wall, the plaza, are a little bit darker. Not dark, but they get less bright sun. All the bright white is up here. So how do I get there? I'd like a nice, not a hard line, but a softer transition from the light to the midtones here. So my handy dandy spray gun comes in most useful here. You can moisten the paper without making a hard line. Again, without establishing a line, you can just lay in some tone to gently start taking away some of that white, and modulate that down into not a dark, but a shadier zone at the bottom of the wall. And as that begins to dry, I can drop in some windows and things like that after it dries a bit. Again, from my sketch, I know I want to leave a streak of light leading right through the painting here. So some could say, does that bother you? No, it doesn't. It's fine. Those could read as just reflections of people or imperfections in the paving. It also connects the top and the bottom of the painting, so no worries at all. As much as possible, working on an angle is a good idea. One tool we have aside from paint and brushes and paper is a very free tool given to us all, gravity. It can be your friend or your enemy, but that's why I don't attach my paint to my easel, my painting. You can modulate this, you can increase the run of the paint, you can decrease, but play around with gravity. This side of the wall is a little less focal in the painting. It's mostly here, but I do want to save some white. So I put some just pure white on that and drop in some tones. I'm going to treat that wall very schematically. Apparently by a little bit, I mean a lot. again, spray bottle is very useful. Blending, very useful. Yeah, well, we had no dark before. We only had light in mid-tones. So. Not good. Well,
You can't just mop that up now, or will it not look?
I can, but I will, but it'll probably make it a bit worse.
One more lamp? Maybe.
Yeah, an interesting shape lamp.
That's true. Yeah, it's just going to smear. So, if I was Joseph Zbukvic, I would say, that's what I meant to do. It's supposed to be like that. Oh well. I'll erect a building back there when it dries to hide it. Or I'll just live with it.
Part of the story.
Sorry. Sure.